Hello and good evening, and welcome to my attempt at my first for the Flipping Your Online Classroom unit in the online course on Futurelearn. Let's begin as though we're a real class then. Okay, C1 students, it's good to be with you again. Today we're doing nothing new in the flipped classroom, but hopefully we're doing something creative. We're using things you've used many times before to create something new. And those things are the simple past, the past continuous, the past perfect, and adverbs, adverbials, adjectives. They together combine a toolbox or a set of items you can use that are called the creative tenses, and adverbs, of course, added on the end. So let's look at what we're going to do. Begin by using the simple past to create a simple story. And if you look at the screen, you can see there is a simple story. Let's look at it. There was a noise. I woke up. I got out of bed. I went downstairs. I saw an open window. I felt afraid. Somebody said something. I jumped in fear. I turned around. I saw a familiar face. It was my brother. He gave me the news. Okay. It's a story. It's a bit boring. No colour, no dimension. We need both those things in a good piece of written work that people will want to read. Let's add another tense. Let's describe what was happening at the time these things took place by using the past continuous. Okay? And here come some past continuous sentences. And let's put them into place so that we can read the story more completely. There was a noise. The noise was coming from downstairs. I woke up. I got out of bed. It was freezing. I went downstairs. I saw an open window. It was banging against the frame in the wind. I felt afraid. Something was moving in the shadows. Someone said something. My mind was racing and my heart was beating fast. I jumped in fear. I turned around. A man was standing in the corner of the room. I saw a familiar face. It was my brother. He was bleeding. He gave me the news. So, a little bit more colourful now. We know what was happening whilst the main events took place. Time for a bit more colour. Often stories are more interesting because we know what happened before the story began. We have some background to help us understand what's happening. Let's add some past perfect sentences now. And here are, hopefully, some past perfect sentences coming up the screen now. And let's add them to our story. Okay, let's make our story slightly better placed. Okay. There was a noise. The noise was coming from downstairs. I woke up. I had been drinking until late and had gone to bed late. I got out of bed. It was freezing. I had forgotten to turn on the heating. I went downstairs. I saw an open window. It was banging against the frame in the wind. It had been smashed and the glass had scattered. I felt afraid. Something was moving. I had never experienced such terror. Somebody said something. My mind was racing and my heart was beating fast. I jumped in fear. I turned around. A man was standing in the corner of the room. I saw a familiar face. It was my brother. My parents had told me he died when I was 10. He gave me the news. He had been kidnapped by a Texan cult and had spent the last 3 years trying to escape. So now we've got a more complete story. Again, it's still not Harry Potter episode 9, but I think you'll agree it's more interesting than this first story we started with. To make it even more interesting, we can actually just add some details with adverbs, adverbial phrases, and here is the final story. A night that changed my life. Suddenly, Suddenly, there was a loud noise. I woke up slowly because I had been drinking with friends until late and had gone to bed in the early hours. The noise was coming from downstairs. I got out of bed apprehensively. It was freezing. I had forgotten to turn on the central heating the day before. I went downstairs silently in my dressing gown and slippers. I saw an open window. It had been smashed from the outside, and the glass had scattered across the floor. It was banging relentlessly against the frame in the icy wind that cut across my face. I felt utterly afraid. I had never experienced such terror. Something was moving in the shadows. Someone said something in a rasping voice behind me. I jumped in fear. My mind was racing and my heart was beating fast. I turned around faster than a child's top. A man was standing in the corner of the room. I saw a familiar face. It was my brother. My parents had told me he had died when I was 10. He was bleeding. He gave me the incredible news. He had been kidnapped by a Texan cult and had spent the last 3 years trying to escape. Okay, I admit, it's not Shakespeare, but it's more interesting than a simple narrative in the past tense. So, that's what I've done for you to see. That's the illustration. What I would like you to do is, basically, write your own story. And I'd like you to write your story in the same way. Use the simple past to get the first narrative. Then add some past continuous. Finally, add the third of the narrative tenses, the past perfect, before adding extra words. Now, that's probably not the best way to write a book if you're going to be an author. I think you're probably creative from the beginning. But I think you'll admit it's a good way to start seeing the tenses in context and seeing what each tense does to make the story more interesting. I'd like you to write the story, and you can use that title, A Night That Changed My Life. That's your working title. Make the story different from mine. I hope much, much better than mine. And I'll give you 2 weeks to do that. You can prepare it on a Google Doc, or you can send it to my email. You don't need to use the colours. They simply helped me illustrate the different parts of the text and the different tenses we used. So, 2 weeks to write your story. Send it to me, and I'll give you some feedback. And hopefully, I'll have a good time reading your stories. Okay? See you next time. See you in class.